I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, our Living Well Wednesday soft launch of this series. We're glad that you've joined us, and we're here to help you prepare for the upcoming holiday season. The Living Well series started about a year ago in response to the pandemic, when we realized there was a need for us in K-State Research and Extension to offer programming differently and still connect with people during challenging times. The series was really successful, and we had requests to continue the series, and so here we are. I'm Sherilyn Jackson, an Extension Specialist in Family Consumer Sciences for the Northeast region of Kansas, and everyone involved in this series is an Extension professional for K-State. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have a question, please use the Q&A feature. You have the option to ask your question anonymously if you choose to do that. And our moderators today are Myrna and Jennifer, and they'll be assisting with the Q&A portion of the webinar. And today's webinar will also be recorded. And so we will post this to our Living Well website along with additional resources for the sessions. And previous and upcoming topics and webinars will also be posted there. And we'll put the Living Well website and post that in the chat box for you. And within a week after each webinar, you'll also receive an email message with links to the recording, the additional resources, the evaluation that we like to have you complete. And so you'll also get that through a message after the session. We are an equal opportunity employer at K-State Research and Extension. So we just need to let you know about that. And we're going to now get started with the topic for the day. I'm pleased to announce that we're going to be talking about stress less, how to celebrate self-care through the holidays. Our presenters today are Rachel Clues. She's the Family Consumer Sciences Specialist in the Southwest region of Kansas, and Erin Tynan, who's Family Consumer Sciences Agent in Pottawatomie County. So I'm going to turn that over to Rachel and to Erin, and we will let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Sherilyn. I'm going to go ahead and share our slides. All right. And thank you for joining us today. We have a quick poll that I want to take just a quick minute for everyone to take. Give me just a second. All right, so just take a minute or so. We'll give everyone just a little bit of time. What is the main holiday stressor that you face? Got some results coming in. Almost everyone participated. We'll give it just a couple seconds for those who haven't, if they want to participate. And you see the option, if there's something that's not on the list that may be your main stressor, go ahead and put it in the chat box for us. All right. Well, thank you for participating in that. Let's go ahead and share those results. Can you see that on the screen? It looks like the biggest one for everyone is family. It looks like half of our responses were family or family conflict. And we had our next highest one was expectations, just trying to make everyone happy, probably everything to turn out great and perfect. We kind of have that perfect persona that we have of holidays and want everything to turn out well. Planning and preparation, that's a big thing. Someone the other day talked about they were starting the deep clean for everyone to come over. Money and finances are always a big one, making sure that you have everything in order to get everyone the gift they want and the food they want. And so everyone's happy. And then those crowds and lines when you're having to shop. And then we had a couple of people who overeating and weight gain, that is their main one. With all that good food and everyone going to parties, that's one that there is some concern. So thank you for participating in our poll. And, you know, one thing that we talk about that this is going into the holidays, that we have specific holidays that are geared towards, specific stressors that are geared toward the holidays. But, self-care should be a year-round thing, because stress doesn't just happen during the holidays. And so that is our goal today, is we want to talk to you about stress, how it affects the body, and then help you identify maybe your specific stressor, and then help you learn to develop a self-care plan. We want you to maybe start using this as you go through and get ready for the holidays, but we hope that you will also take it with you into next year when you have these stress times come up, that it'll be something that you can pull out and use and help you through those stressful moments. But before we get started, we've got to learn, what is stress? So I'm going to turn it over to Erin, and she is going to talk about what is stress.
All right, so can you, there you go, transition to the next one. So stress is defined as a state of attention that arises when the experience from your demands, from your environment, or from in yourself or inside yourself. I would say that most of our hardcore stressors are generally the ones that initiate from inside of ourselves. A lot of times, if they're from your environment, we can make some little tweaks and changes to those, but those that are within yourself, I noticed the number one poll question answer was family conflict. And what's so hard about that is you can't change others. You can't change your family of origin, and how does that affect you when you go back? And so those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So there's two types of stress. There's acute stress, which is very short-lived. And those are things that happen, very suddenly. Things like a robbery, or maybe before you get in front of a group, you get really tense and tight. And those are acute stress moments. But oftentimes the stress that really debilitates us and that gives us chronic health conditions are those chronic stress moments. It's that constant everyday system that surrounds you that creates the stressors in your life. It's the family conflict, work stress, financial stressors, being in a high stress environment constantly, day in and day out. We can often recognize that we're stressed right before we go give a big speech, or things like that, because it's very visible. But oftentimes chronic stress is very subtle in nature, so it's really difficult for people to realize that they're even in a stressful moment. Subtle stress is really hard, because sometimes it really takes tuning into ourselves to reflect on what our bodies actually do when we're super stressed. Sometimes we don't even realize it. I remember the night before I left for college, I got hives everywhere. And I thought it was because it was an allergic reaction to soap. And it didn't hit me till a week later that it was oh, I was super stressed about going to college. My body had a very visible, reaction to that. And I had went to the doctor about it. He said, "Have you been under any stress?" I said, "No, I'm fine." And later on, I was well, yeah, I was super stressed. It was my first time being out by myself, and I got hives, and I didn't even correlate the two. And sometimes we don't correlate what's the impact that stress is having on our body, and that we are really stressed and we're in those chronic stress situations.
One thing that we think most often of when we think stress, we think negative, but actually there is a positive stress. It's eustress. And that prefix you, think of euphoria. It means well or good. And so those are good stress. It's positive. And so let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. So what is eustress? It's, something that kind of is beneficial to us. It's kind of healthy. It motivates performance. So think about that first date maybe that you ever went on, those feeling that you got. It's a little bit stressful, but it's exciting. Maybe when you work out, that it's, you're pushing yourself, you're challenging yourself. That's stressful, but it's good. It's pushing you for well-being and performance. A roller coaster ride, those are kind of those things that it's stressful, but it's also exciting. For some people, scary movies. For me, that's going too far. But it's also about perspective. For me, public speaking, I get a little nervous, but it also excites me. My husband, on the other hand, he hates it. It paralyzes him. So it wouldn't be a good stress for him. But eustress is one of those things that some of the words down here at the bottom of our slide, it's that short term, acute, but it's challenge, motivates, it gives growth. So there is a positive stress. So we always think negative, but I want you to remember this eustress. All right, and so now we've talked about the definition. We want to talk about what stress does to your body.
So stress is uniquely designed. There is an evolutionary purpose to stress. Sometimes it feels like, gosh, why do we have this? Why was this created in our lives? So years and years ago, when our ancestors were, alive, that stress response actually kept them alive. So every time we're presented with a threatening situation, our most basic survival instinct is either to engage in a flight or run for our lives. And so if you think about our ancestors, when they had to hunt for their food and things like that, they had to be very aware of their body and everything about their body. And they're kind of in a heightened state of being. And if you're literally going out to hunt an animal or something like that, those basic instincts that arise in your body are important. But the problem with stress is when it becomes, that long term. So the next slide, please. So this is what happens to our body during flight or fight response. So oftentimes, either our body, when we hit stress, we're either prepped to either fight it or to just detach and flight from it. So adrenaline is secreted from the kidneys, cortisol is released. And this is a really crucial thing because this is where a lot of that damage happens. Cortisol is a hormone and it produces bursts of energy, but it also has a lot of negative effects on our body. Too much cortisol over periods of time, it messes with a lot of the production of our hormones and the overall systems of our body. Our heart starts to beat fast, our breath rate and blood pressure increase, blood sugar is released into our bloodstream, hearing and sight are enhanced, and then our digestive system and urine production slow to divert blood to more critical areas like our brain and our muscles. And as you can see, if I'm like physically ready to go get into a fight, these are all things that are essential to my well-being. I want to have my hearing and sight enhanced. I want my heart to beat faster. I want to be on the peak of being in tune and alert. But what oftentimes happens is, this situation happens in our bodies all day, throughout the day, every time we enter into a stressful moment. And when things like this are going on in our body, it actually diverts the attention needed to go into our immune system that helps us fight diseases and chronic diseases. So if you're constantly stressed, your body is going through this process all day. And it doesn't need to be, because your body needs to be focused on some of its important functioning, to make sure that your immune system is getting what it needs to fight off diseases and colds and all those things. So that's why we need to try to control our stress, because it does overall affect the functions of our body and our immune system. So this shows just a picture of your brain. So on the back side of our brain is, I'm not quite sure how to say that, occipital lobe. I call it, the lower part of our brainstem, which is right up here, or right down here. And this is called the frontal lobe up here. So when we're super stressed, all of our thought process is all diverted towards the back brainstem back here. The problem with that is there is no learning, or oftentimes when we consider what's in the zone, when we feel at the top of our game, that we're learning things quickly, things just like connect and make sense in our brain. Hopefully, you know, when you're in an educational setting, your thought process is in the frontal part of our lobe. It's where we reason, it's where we have empathy, all the good things that we want when we're interacting with people or thinking about ourselves. Those all happen in the frontal lobes. But when we're stressed, all of it comes back here. So if you've ever tried to talk to a screaming 3-year-old over a red cup instead of green, no experience there that I'm talking about. Their thought process is all back here. Same thing for us. When we get really heated, when you think about a family conflict, and sometimes you just say things that you really regret, or, you know, if you're with your spouse and you just have had it and you start, you know, screaming things, all thought processes are back here. The only way to bring your thought process from back here to your frontal lobe is through oxygen. That's why breathing is just really, really important. It's why when children get mad and we're trying to reason with them, you can't reason with them until they've calmed down, until their thoughts move more to the frontal lobe. And the only way that you can do that is just by breath, and by calming down, by calming all those stress responses in your body down. And the most important thing you can do there is to deep breathe. And so we're going to talk about breath a little bit later on, but I thought this is always just a good visual to be thinking about, not only ourselves, with kids, anybody. And you know, there's a lot of people who most of their thought processes all unfortunately comes from back here because they've never learned through childhood how to convert it. You know, they've probably had a lot of trauma and it's hard for them to convert the thought processes to their frontal lobe. And so this kind of just is a brief overview of what stress can do to the body. Pretty much, as you can see, it really affects every single part of our body. It can give us headaches. You know, all the, you know, mental illness is derived in a lot of these panic attacks, anxiety disorders, depression. It can affect our skin, our muscles, joints, our heart, all those, you know, that cortisol that's shooting throughout our body. When there's extreme amounts of that all the time, it's really damaging to all of your organs and your skin, your reproductive system. It lowers your immune system. And one thing to think about is not only does it lower your immune system response in that moment, but it can lower it up to 11 hours after that point. So if you're super, super stressed. So when you think about that, wow, just like one stressful response in my day can lower my overall response from my body for 11 hours. Like that's a long time for your immune system not to be operating at its peak performance. So stress can uniquely affect everybody very differently. The way it manifests in your body is very, very different than, you know, the way it manifests in your neighbor's body. Each stress response is going to be very uniquely individualized. So figuring out kind of how you hold your stress, I think is really, really important. Because sometimes, like I said, we don't think that we're stressed, but we really are stressed. I'm a total culprit of that. I'm always like, yeah, everything's fine. And I don't always like really think about, you know, this was a really stressful moment for me today, and I didn't even process it. So like I said, we're all unique individuals. The way we handle stress is different. The things that stress us out are going to be different. And the things that we need to do to combat it are going to be very different.
And so just like the picture shows, all these different unique individuals, you know, there's no one size fits all when it comes to the symptoms of stress. And Myrna has already put in the chat box a document. If you're able to open it, go ahead and do so. We'll have it posted on our website after today. And if you can't get access to it right now, the next few slides are going to delve into it, so don't worry about it. But, you know, stress can impact our physical and our emotional and our behavioral self. And so that's what we're going to look at. So first, we're going to talk about the physical symptoms. So look at the list here on the screen, or if you have the document open. So which one of these how do you experience physical stress? For me, I clench my teeth. When I am stressed, I mean, my teeth clench. That's how I have it. I get my neck stiff, my shoulders are tight. And so for me, that's my physical symptoms of stress. So maybe yours isn't on here. If you feel like it, you can put it in the chat box. You can share with us. But again, there's no, one symptom fits all for everyone. Everyone is going to have a different, way of it. As you can see, some people might have an increased appetite where they're going to, kind of calm themselves down with eating food. Others might be decreased appetite where they don't want to eat anything. So it can be very polar for different people and their personalities. So I would suggest if you have the deal, you can print it out, circle your symptoms, write them down. A lot of times when we actually put things, pen to paper, it helps us in our mind realize, okay, this is my symptom. And so later on, we'll be more aware when we're experiencing it. So it's good to kind of know, okay, this is where I'm experiencing this. So a lot of times I'll be going along in my day and I'm like, oh my goodness, my jaw's really hurting. Oh, well, it's probably because I've been clenching my teeth for the last couple of hours because I'm stressed about this project or something. So that symptom is like making me aware, okay, maybe I should relax, take a step back and practice some self-care. So I would suggest these next few panels is make note of what your specific symptoms are. Keep them on hand, and that way you can kind of be more aware when you see those crop up in your day that, okay, maybe I'm a little stressed and what do I need to do to de-stress? Our next one is the emotional symptoms. Which one on this list do you experience? And again, you can see how some of them, you might lash out at people. You might, be aggressive, irritable, feeling bored, exhausted, decision making. You might be a great decision, problem solver, but when you're stressed, you can't do it. Feeling depressed, you cry, nervous, angry. For me, I can't turn my mind off. It's just, I'm trying to figure it all out and it just keeps racing. And so then it becomes a behavioral one, which we'll look at next. So the behavioral symptoms. So when I can't turn my mind off, I can't sleep. So I'm staying up, I'm trying to get it all sorted out. And again, yours might not be on this list. You might experience it, some different way, but a lot of times it's, different. And again, if yours isn't listed on what we've shared, share with us in the chat. Maybe someone else experiences the same thing. And so the goal is to know what your symptoms are so you can be aware when you're experiencing them, and then kind of know then at that point, here's what I need to do to take care of it, to kind of help myself. And that's what we're going to talk about next in our self-care plan.
So we want you guys to kind of devise a self-care toolbox. And kind of how I think about this is this is kind of a set of predetermined tools that you can draw on whenever you feel like you're not coping. When you recognize some of those symptoms are popping up in your life, that you have the jaw clenching constantly and you're getting headaches, or your shoulders are constantly tight. Okay, like, is something stressing me out? And what are some things that I can do to help myself relax? And when I think about this, I kind of think about it as a system. And oftentimes when we leave things like this, we're like, okay, I'm going to set a goal, and I'm going to do, maybe exercise is your stress relief. I'm going to exercise 45 minutes a day. And oftentimes that goal falls flat, because goals really, not that goals are bad, or anything, but once you kind of figure out what your goal should be, set it on the shelf, and then think about, what can I do to create a system that surrounds me that enables some of these, my goal to happen. The system is what's important. The process is what's important. I love this quote that says, it's by James Clear, says, "We do not rise to our greatest goals, we fall to the level of our systems." So be thinking about that as you're trying to devise your self-care toolbox. How can I create these really small moments in my day? And it may not be like a 45-hour or 45-minute gym sweat session, because that's a really lofty goal for someone that's never worked out. But how can I create these little moments in my day that, maybe a 10-minute walk is something that I can do at my lunch break. And that kind of helps my brain just, process, some of the stuff that's happened. It helps myself get away for a little bit from your office environment, if that's one of your stressors. Those are things that you can pull from your self-care toolbox. And daily habits always win. Your daily habits are perfectly designed to deliver your current results. So habits are just really, really important, and small habits are really, really important. The impact of a small habit over the length of a life is way better than, think about consistency versus intensity. How can we create kind of these small moments in our day where we're creating this self-care toolbox for ourselves, where we're maybe picking one or two things out of there that really help us. So these are just some proven tools. Like I said, things that you can incorporate into your system that surrounds you. Breathing, like I said, I mentioned that one slide. That's how we move around all the thought processes in our brain. That oxygen is vital to helping us think clear, to helping us solve problems. And so deep breathing is really important. Some people, find that meditation really works for them. There's some great, I'm not a meditator because my brain's always like, 100 miles an hour. I sit down and I try to think about something reflective, and then it's like, oh, I got to do this, this, and this. But there's some great guided meditations on YouTube that you could listen to before bed. I think is always an important time, especially if you, like me, and your brain doesn't turn off. One thing I heard the other day that I really like was set aside personal think time. And it's just like 10 minutes a day where you're just like, okay, no expectations. That to me is a lot more feasible than like, oh, I'm going to sit down and do a 45-minute meditative. Like, no, that doesn't work for me. Some people it does. And this is about finding what uniquely works for you. But, just allow time to not think about anything, kind of see what pops up in your brain. For me, that's my drive to and from work. And I discovered during COVID that how vital that drive was for me, because that is literally what my drive is. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to think. So if you've got that, time frame in your schedule too, maybe personal think time is pretty important. Exercise, like I said, if you're someone that doesn't exercise at all, don't set a really lofty goal of 45 minutes a day. Think about how you can chunk that out and create a habit within your system. Stretching is really important too, especially if you hold stress in certain parts of your body. There's excellent stretches out there on YouTube that kind of just focus in on different parts of your body. It's great. Now we live in a world where we can access so much like workout videos, yoga videos, all on YouTube for free. Muscle relaxation is another one that works for some people. Try to think really intently about contracting your muscles and then kind of breathing through that, and contracting and breathing with each muscle part on your body, starting with, your toes and moving kind of up through your body. And then our self-talk, thinking about how we talk to ourselves when we make errors, and, when we get super stressed, how are we talking to ourselves? Is it how you would talk to your best friend? Are we talking to ourselves with compassion? Are we talking, through our day, looking for ways to be grateful? So those are just all proven tools. It doesn't mean that there's something in there that helps you that wouldn't be helpful to somebody else. But those are just ways that we know through research that those things do work for a lot of people. So those are things that you could pick from when you're thinking about your self-care toolbox.
Here's a good acronym, if you can remember, BRAIN. As Aaron talked about the brain and breathing, the first one, breathe. So just everyone right now, we don't have time. I mean, we could talk about this a lot longer, but we want to be value your time with us, and we know people have to get back from lunch. But let's do just 3 deep breaths right now. So everyone, you maybe close your eyes, but just breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and release the air slowly. And one more time, breathe in and breathe out, releasing the air slowly. And that R, tell yourself to relax, whether it's in your head or maybe you need to say it out loud. I just need to relax. And see if you notice the tension in your body and try to release it. If it's in your shoulders, try to release that tension in your shoulders or your neck. Maybe stretching your neck if it's there. Ask yourself what you need or want to feel. Usually we ask ourselves, why is that person being such a tool? And why, we messed up. Don't think about that. Think of positivity. Think, what do I need? What do I want to feel in this space? And so that way, if we want to feel calm, if we want to feel in control, those comforting feelings, because when we ask ourselves, then we can imagine feeling that way. Okay. So now that we've done those 4 things, then reflect on how you're feeling. Maybe that's giving you just enough time. It doesn't take very long to do those steps, but maybe it's enough time for you to calm down and relax and start the de-stressing process. And so Myrna can put in the chat box another handout that has this on there with a couple of other breathing exercises, and try to practice maybe deep breathing a couple of times a day. Take a couple of these. If you can't do all of them, try a couple of them for a week. See how you feel differently at the end of that week. And if it's working, keep doing it. But just like we talked about, we're all unique individuals and we experience stress differently. We also manage our stress differently. So yes, we have those scientifically proven ways that work, but like Erin said, meditation doesn't work for her. It does not work for me either. I chase squirrels in my mind and I think, did I put the laundry in the dryer? I need to add that to my shopping list. And so my mind just goes a million miles an hour and I can't be still long enough to meditate. And so for me, it's one of those things that washing the dishes by hand, it calms me. Coloring, I mean, I'm an adult, but I like coloring. It's one of those things that helps, calm and color, calm and just make me find peace. So the third handout that Myrna will put into the chat box, we don't have a lot of time today, but I want you to hope that you'll download this. These are specific other tools that maybe you can look at and add to your toolbox. If it's a physical stress, here's some ideas. Maybe you need to get a medical checkup. Maybe, some people aren't huggers, but, we've had a year of, touch and physical. Maybe finding someone that, hugging them, that loved one or a friend during the holidays. Receiving a massage is always great. Mental, taking 10 minutes, 5 minutes a day to just relax and do something other than what is stressing you out. You just taking that time to reflect on your blessings, doing a hobby. I love to watch goat videos and kitten videos because I don't have to think about it. I can just enjoy, and I don't have to, there's nothing stressful about enjoying a kitten or a little goat playing, So it's one of those things that's in my toolbox because it's not a one size fits all. And here are some emotional, spiritual things that, might work for you. A random act of kindness. There was a study that just came out that a lot of times when we do other things for other people, I mean, we all know that it helps us feel better about ourselves when we're kind to others. And so maybe one of those things is those random acts of kindness. So if, family stressors was a big one. So maybe setting those boundaries. Who doesn't like to play with the kids? So if your family's stressing you out, find the kid or the grandkid and spend some time playing a game with them. Just move away from that situation that is stressing you. Some other areas, personal finance was one. Make a budget and stick to that budget when it comes to the holidays. Gifts don't have to be extravagant and X amount of money. It really is the thought that counts. And so, thinking about other ways that you can show love and appreciation that might not be financial means, but still practical and showing love. So some work and professional ideas as well, and some personal and relational ones. So it's not a one size fits all. We want to make sure you're aware of that. Try some of them out. If that one doesn't work, try something. We want you to have those proven tools that you use constantly. Sometimes we need to add more tools to our toolbox, and that's what we hope that you'll get here, and that you'll try some different tools to put in there.
So when you're thinking about the holidays, I think one thing is to do is again, to do some reflection. Think about the things that really do stress you out and try to plan ahead. One of the most important things that I think that we struggle with as just society as a whole is setting boundaries. And family gatherings oftentimes bring up a lot of those situations where you don't feel like you should set a boundary because they're your family, and it feels very wrong to maybe set a boundary because they're your family. But boundaries are really important, and there's a common misconception that self-care always feels good. Sometimes self-care is doing the thing that's really hard for you, but also best for you. So when you think about family conflict or family communication and dynamics, sometimes it is speaking up and saying your piece about something to somebody that is in your family that you do respect, but you don't always agree with, what they're saying or things like that. And that's a really, really hard thing to do. Make self-care a daily routine. Like I said, make it a habit. Put it into your day. Because if you don't make it a habit, you're going to fall back into what your old habits are. And sometimes instead of like setting a goal, I think it's always more impactful to ask yourself a question. So, if you want to maintain your mental health through the holidays, be thinking about it every corner, every time you may run into a stressful situation. What would a mentally healthy person do right now? Instead of thinking with your goal of, I want to be mentally healthy for the holidays. Every time you encounter a stressful situation, ask yourself that question. What would a mentally healthy person do right now? Especially if you're trying to incorporate some of those stress management techniques, would that be to go for a short walk? For some people, if they're trying to get more exercise in that type, would that be to take the stairs or would that be to take the elevator? Okay. What I want to do right now is I want to take the stairs because I know that that's what a healthy person does. And every time that we ask ourselves that question, I think that we have a better chance of incorporating that habit instead of just saying, the blatant goal of what you want, because this way it helps you every day, and all those little moments and those little scenarios give you the train of thought of what would this person do? What would this type of person do? And how can I create that in my own life? And then it also doesn't give you, a lot of times when we don't meet our goals, we go into this self-deprecating shame cycle of, oh, I always do this to myself. I say I'm going to do this and then I don't do it and blah, 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 blah. Because this isn't necessarily about goal setting. It's about incorporating daily habits and at every turn kind of asking yourself those questions of, what do I need to do here? Or what would this look like? What would the healthy person look like in this scenario? And then of course, find the supports, find the people that are going to support that system that you're trying to create, and be very verbal about what that system is and what you want to do. Okay, so that kind of concludes everything that we had for you guys today. We will be sharing these slides over email. I know there was a lot of information, and I especially hope that you'll kind of pick up some of those things from the toolbox and maybe outline some of those things that you think might work for you. And what's great about this is it's a total trial and error process. Like I said, you may try one thing and be like, well, that didn't do anything for me. And you got to move on to the next thing. And that's part of it. That's the process. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means that that didn't work for you and you need to move on to another stress management technique that does. I've heard some unique ones over the years. Rachel said she likes to wash dishes. Like, I always thought it was weird because I like to go swing. Even as an adult, I like to swing. But I learned through that that is my stress management technique, because I need time to process and reflect things. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it's weird. If it works for you, it works for you. So that's really important too, is that you find something that works for you.
So we still have a few minutes before the top of the hour, if there are any questions or comments or discussion. And as Myrna posted in the chat, we will have a link to the handouts that were shared at our webpage, and she put a link there, and there will be a recording of the session of the webinar on the website as well.
Rachel and Aaron, we don't have a question right now, but we do have a comment in the chat box that they liked the way Aaron and Rachel worked back and forth with the presentation.
Well, thank you. It's nice that we can be in different parts of the state and still be able to do this. Well, Sherilyn, we will turn it back over to you for just the end of the housekeepings.
Great. I want to thank Aaron and Rachel today. I know I've learned some things too, and really need to take some of this to heart and process it before the upcoming holidays when things get even more crazy than usual. I just want to highlight too that the team that's working on this series looks at the whole area of living well, of health and wellness very broadly, including physical, mental, financial, and relationship health. And so when we launch our official series, this is actually considered a soft launch, the program today, then the one on December 8th. But when we launch in January and go January through March, we'll be touching on all areas of living well. And we'll, again, just watch for more information on the website. Our next topic, our next in this soft launch series is to stress less, to connect and communicate through the holidays. We look forward to seeing many of you back then, and please share this opportunity widely with your friends and your family. Joellen Argabright and Tristan Cope will be our presenters at the next session. And then our series will kick off in January. It'll be the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. Again, here's our information. And if you would please fill out the evaluation form, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen. It will also be sent to you immediately after the session's over. We'd like to hear from you. And please, if you have suggestions, I noticed some were in the chat, that's great. Please give us some feedback as to what we can include that would be helpful to you. Thanks for joining us today. We hope to see you on December 8th, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.